Hello and welcome back to the channel. Well, we've got an eclipse coming up, and it's going to be a pretty good one. It's already being called the Great American Eclipse, April 8th, 2024. I've been going around giving eclipse talks at libraries and other functions. If this is your first time in an eclipse, I find there's a couple of questions that tend to get asked over and over again, so let's take a look at a couple of these. Number one, what's so special about an eclipse? It gets dark every night, doesn't it? Well, this is actually a very good question. Yes, it does get dark every night. And in fact, if you think about it, the Earth and the Sun and the Moon don't really care that there's an eclipse. These things move in front of each other all the time. The issue is your eye and your brain system. You are accustomed to seeing daylight. You are accustomed to seeing things at night. But the look of the sky during an eclipse is unlike anything you've ever experienced before. It's a little bit hard to describe, but depending on the eclipse that you happen to be watching, I find the sky takes on this sort of shimmery, silvery, almost fish-like quality. And it's not something that you're used to seeing, and you will freak out. There's a number I'd like to attach to this. I'm going to say that half of all people watching an eclipse for the very first time will cry. It's okay. Go ahead and cry. You're going to scream anyway. Might as well just let it all out. It is an experience that you will never forget, and if you've never seen an eclipse before and you're somewhere near the path of totality, I would strongly recommend that you try to get there to experience this yourself. Second question I often get, why don't eclipses happen all the time? After all, the moon goes around the Earth once every 29 and a half or so days. Why isn't there an eclipse every month? Well, it turns out the moon is inclined about 5 degrees above the plane where the Earth and the Sun sit, making eclipses relatively rare. Every 18 months or so, you get an eclipse somewhere. So unlike a lunar eclipse, where the Earth is in front of the moon, anybody on the dark side of the Earth can see the lunar eclipse, and it lasts for quite a bit of time. However, because the moon is so much smaller than the Earth, when the moon comes in front of the Earth, it casts a much smaller shadow. The band is only about 100 miles wide, and it's moving at about 2,000 or so miles per hour. So even if you're in the right spot, totality typically only lasts a couple of minutes. Okay, another question we get. I'm living in an area, for example, where I am right now, where we're going to see 95% of the sun covered. Is that good enough? And the answer, surprisingly, is no, it's not good enough. There's an old saying that says if the sun is 98% covered, you have experienced 1% of what an eclipse can offer. There is no feeling in the world like that last 10 or 15 seconds when the sun disappears entirely. Now, not all eclipses are created equal. Some of them are partial eclipses, some of them are total eclipses, which this one's going to be, and some of them are what we call annular eclipses, where the moon does not completely cover the sun. And the reason for this is because the moon is not always the same size in the sky. It gets a little smaller, it gets a little bigger, and the reason for this is because the moon's orbit is not a circle around the Earth, it's more of an ellipse. To show this, I went out and I took this picture of the moon at the so-called supermoon in 2016, and then once a month I went out again, took a picture at the same time, and you can see from the so-called supermoon to the smallest one, which I guess you would call a micromoon, you can see that there is a difference in size of somewhere around 12%. So in order to have a really great eclipse, which is this one's going to be, by the way, there's a lot of things that have to happen. Most of the Earth is covered by water, so it stands to reason most eclipses happen over the oceans where, well, most people don't see it. So the eclipse has to happen in your area. It has to be a total eclipse and not a partial or an annular eclipse. And on top of all of that, it has to be clear out the day of the eclipse. And this is a problem where I am because I'm planning to go to Burlington, Vermont, one of the cloudiest places in the United States. I have a friend who lives in Buffalo, and he actually jokes about this, and he actually calls the place Sunny Buffalo. Well, if you look at the data, I think Burlington, Vermont could give Buffalo a run for its money statistically on the amount of cloud cover. Let's take a look at predicted cloud cover historically from 1979 to I think that's about 2022. Historical data suggests that on April the 8th, there is a 60 to 70% chance that it's going to be cloudy. The best place to be statistically in the United States is Texas, and that's where a lot of my friends are going. So it's a few days before the eclipse here, and a really surprising thing has happened. The entire script for visibility and cloud cover has flipped on its end. As of right now, it looks as though Texas is going to be getting rain through most of that week, and Burlington, Vermont is looking good. Take a look at this weather forecast. For the foreseeable future, there is only one day where they're expecting clear skies. That is the day of the eclipse. Amazing. Another question we get, do I need eclipse glasses? Yes, 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 you need eclipse glasses. Please do not give people like me a heart attack. Please protect your eyes. Now, these eclipse glasses can take a number of forms. There are these traditional glasses, or you can get a card that you can just hold in front of your eyes like this. They need to be on the whole time you're staring at the sun. At the time of totality, as soon as the sun is covered, you can take the glasses off. When the moon starts to move away from the sun and you start to see the sun again, the glasses need to go on again. When looking at eclipse glasses, you want the ones that have the ISO rating on them. If you don't see that number printed on the eclipse glasses, don't use them. Another question I get, should I try to photograph the eclipse? Well, there's another saying that says, view your first eclipse, photograph your second. And even if you've seen many eclipses, I think that should be your priority as well. Nothing should get in the way of you experiencing this thing live. And I've actually seen people sort of fiddling with their cameras when totality hits and they're looking down and they can't figure it out, and the next thing you know, they have missed the eclipse entirely. Don't be one of those people. So I'm going to take this Takahashi FC76. It's been pretty good for this kind of thing in the past. And I'll tell you, because the weather forecast changed so quickly, I actually didn't make a lot of great plans for this one. I assumed I was going to miss this eclipse because of the historic cloud cover. And when the forecast changed, I kind of had to scramble to re-verify some of these reservations and contacts that I had made. And in fact, I have a solar filter for this telescope, but I lost it. I've turned this place upside down and I can't find it. So I wound up borrowing this 4-inch solar filter from my friend Mike, and you can see I've sort of shimmed it down, and it's just going to go on there like this. Here we are up near the New Hampshire-Vermont border. This is a popular scenic overlook. Yes, we still have snow, and so far, traffic is normal. I got into Burlington in the afternoon, in this charming section of town. Traffic was moderate towards the end, not too bad. And if you've noticed, the skies have cleared up just the way the forecast predicted. Now, we ran into a minor snafu with the shooting location. We had permission to be in a cemetery right next to that house that I showed you, until we didn't. The town told us we couldn't be there. So we called around, and the owners actually know somebody who lives on this promontory point that juts out into Lake Champlain. As you can see, it's a stunningly beautiful location. It's so nice here. When we first got over to this place, I actually forgot all about the eclipse for a while. I was just walking around. I got here early enough to spend some time taking in the beautiful scenery around the point and the lake. As more people showed up, they began serving more food. There was more food here than we could eat in 2 days. After lunch, I set up the FC76 and people began taking their places in their chairs. When first contact happened, you could feel the excitement building. It began getting darker and a light breeze picked up. Afterwards, we compared notes as to what we all saw and felt. I started hearing traffic reports about the clogged roads in New Hampshire and Vermont and decided to stay another night. Some friends who came up for the day told me it took them an additional 11 hours to get back home. Some of them didn't get home until after 3 a.m. I had some time to give a tour of the night sky for the locals that night with the Celestron 6-inch f5 reflector that I'd brought. My hosts gave me a walking tour of Burlington. This place has a quirky reputation for being a hippie town. People don't lock their doors. One of the most common statements made to me was, "A crazy person lives in that house." The residents here are true individualists. They don't care for fast food, chain stores, or big box stores. You have to get out to the suburbs near the highways to find that stuff. All of this is slowly changing, though, as the city is getting gentrified. Property values are going up, and crime and homelessness are becoming hot topics around town. The waterfront is a gorgeous area to walk or go for a bike ride. That's New York in the distance across the lake. This would be such a pleasant place to live if it didn't get so darn cold in the winter. And as a nice bonus, I wound up on CBS Sunday Morning on April 7th. That's Jane Pauley's show, the day before the eclipse. They asked if they could come up and film me giving my talk and did an interview with me afterwards. They have over an hour's worth of footage on me and used, I think, about 55 seconds worth. The irony is I missed the segment when it aired as I was on my way to Vermont that morning. So there you have it, a look at my experience with the eclipse of April 8, 2024. I want to thank my hosts as well as all of the people who shared the experience with me. I've pointed out that we don't take the trip takes us, and that was even more true here. Even though very little happened the way I expected, it couldn't have turned out better. This was a great experience. Thanks for watching.